More than 4 months before the Iran deal was even inked, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appeared before a joint meeting of the United States Congress to argue strongly against it. Now that there is a deal between the world and Iran, Netanyahu has publicly and vocally condemned it.
What a stunning, historic mistake.
The Prime Minister has found many sympathetic ears for certain, but there are others, including some in Israel, who have called his rhetoric and actions into question. I wanted to know how the President of the United States felt. Prime Minister Netanyahu has injected himself forcefully into this debate on American foreign policy in Washington. Can you recall a time when a foreign head of government has done that? Is it appropriate for a foreign head of government to inject himself into an American debate?
Yeah, I'll let you ask Prime Minister Netanyahu that question if he gives you an interview. I don't recall a similar example. Obviously, the relationship between the United States and Israel is deep. It is profound. It's reflected in my policies because I've said repeatedly, and more importantly, acted on the basic notion that our commitment to Israel's security is sacrosanct. It's something that I take very seriously, which is why we provided more assistance, more military cooperation, more intelligence cooperation to Israel than any previous administration. But as I said in the speech yesterday, on the substance, the Prime Minister is wrong on this. And I think that I can show that the basic assumptions that he's made are incorrect. If, in fact, my argument is right, that this is the best way for Iran not to get a nuclear weapon, then that's not just good for the United States, that is very good for Israel. In fact, historically, this has been the argument that has driven Prime Minister Netanyahu and achieved consensus throughout Israel. So the question has to be, is there in fact a better path to preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon than this one? And I've repeatedly asked both Prime Minister Netanyahu and others to present me a reasonable, realistic plan that would achieve exactly what this deal achieves, and I have yet to get a response. So, as I said yesterday, I completely understand why both he and the broad Israeli public would be suspicious, cautious about entering into any deal with Iran. But what I also try to remind everyone yesterday is that when we entered into arms treaties with the Soviet Union, they had missiles pointed at every single major American city. We actually had to constrain ourselves and reduce our firepower. The risks were much more severe there. Here we're preserving all our options so that if Iran does cheat, we can still exercise the same set of options that we have in place today. And I've been very clear about the fact that if Israel were attacked by Iran, for example, there's no doubt that not just me, but any U.S. administration would do everything that we needed to do to make sure that Israel was protected. So there are all kinds of hedges if, in fact, Iran weren't to abide by the deal. But if, in fact, Iran does abide by the deal, as it has the interim deal over the last 2 years, then we have purchased at a very small price one of the single most important national security objectives that both the United States and Israel has.
There's been some debate about the amount of money that Iran will get as a result of sanctions relief. Whatever the amount is, it's clear they're going to get some resources, yes, and some part of it, they're being out of the sanctions regime, will be
improves their economy.
Will be applied to the economy, but some of it, yes, to regional activity.
Right.
So I want to be clear: are you saying to the region, to the Gulf states, to other Arab countries, look, this is inevitable. Iran is going to play an increased role in the region. Get used to it.
Well, I think the message is that the nefarious activities that Iran engages in, whether it's providing arms to Hezbollah or stirring up destabilizing activities among some of their Gulf neighbors, is something that they've been able to do consistently at very low cost. That I have no doubt that as Iran's economy improved or they got some financial inflows, that relieves some fiscal pressure on their military. They may be able to fund some additional activities, but it's not a game changer. And the reason that Iran has been effective has less to do with the amount of money they've spent. It has more to do with the fact that although Gulf countries, for example, spend 8 times more, at least combined, on defense than Iran's entire defense budget, they haven't deployed it in ways that have been as strategically effective. And part of the function of our meeting up at Camp David with Gulf leaders was to describe how we can work with them to create a more effective counter to these kinds of activities. And whether it's countering cyber attacks or a possible ballistic missile threat, but more typically the kinds of asymmetric proxy activities that Iran has developed over the last several decades. Those are things that we know how to do if all those countries are cooperating and we're doing it systematically. That will have a greater impact than simply preventing this deal from taking place. The flip side of it is if Iran is able to get a nuclear weapon, if its breakout time remains as short as it is right now and they are installing advanced centrifuges and so on, then they will be emboldened to engage in more of the activities that have been discussed, which are not constrained or bound by the amount of money Iran has, but rather have to do with the very strategic decisions that Iran's making at any given time.
We'll be back with the president in just a moment. We are in the map room of the White House. The map room was essentially an early version of the Situation Room during World War II. It is where Franklin Delano Roosevelt came to ponder next moves in the war. I will ask President Obama if he will need to seriously think about a war with Iran if this deal falls through.